stream, je préfère.
Je vais te demander de te calmer, ok? La bouffe anglaise est très bonne. On a déjà eu ce débat.
On aura le débat tout à l'heure. Est-ce que vous êtes prêts? Je vais décaler John.
Ok,
Vous êtes prêts? Allez.
Ils sont finis.
Hi John.
Hi John.
Hey John.
Are you there?
Let me just turn my camera on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ok, perfect.
Allez Nasty, c'est pour toi.
So we are on stream.
Great. Welcome back.
Perfect.
So everyone's saying hi in the chat. I don't know if you have it under your eyes.
Hi.
I do.
Thanks. Obviously, everyone is very happy to have you here. Let me just,
thanks for having me.
Let me just check. Okay, cool. We can see you right. Well, thank you very much for being here. We already had a quick chat earlier, but everyone's really glad to have you. We are obviously very honored to be able to have you on the stream. It's been a roller coaster type of year, but it was super exciting, and yeah, it had a almost perfect ending. But I guess we can just debrief really quickly. First question. Well, we'll be taking some questions from the chat later on, but first of all, like, we had a couple of questions that we wanted to ask. First one is, how did you adapt to France when you first moved here? How have you been enjoying France? And Joaquin wants me to ask, which is your favorite city in France?
I don't think I've traveled enough to have a favorite city. I've loved Paris the times that we've gone. Nice was amazing. But it's always a bit strange with esports when you go to places, because you're going for an event or something like that, and you technically go, but a lot of places like Est, for example, we went to compete in Aix-en-Provence, and I went to a hotel, then to a practice place, then to the event, then back to the hotel, then on the train. So it's like I've not really been there. So I always try wherever I go to take a bit of time to go for a walk or go for a run or anything like that. So I think, starting with that kind of part of the question, I think Nice was amazing. Lyon I've been to, which is also amazing, but I need to kind of spend more time in each place to decide. And I like Tours as well. I like Le Mans, which I spend quite a lot of time there as well. Yeah, so I mean, I like a lot of it for a lot of different reasons. And then in terms of the first part, like adapting to France, I mean, it's kind of the same sort of thing. I've been doing this for a really long time, and I used to, especially when I was younger, treat it almost like a boot camp kind of thing, or like I'd be very esportsy when I went somewhere and like not go out that much. So I've lived in Berlin, but it wasn't until like 6 months of living in Berlin that I actually started to decide to just go out and do things. Whereas here, I just decided that I would act like I'm just living here full time, because I'm at partly the age, and also just I've been doing it for a long time, like I mentioned. So
yeah,
I was just acting like I lived here. So like I got a gym membership, even though it had to be a minimum of a year. I was just like, well, I'm just gonna do it. Like I'm gonna start to like try and put down roots. So I've really loved it. I still need to learn French much better, which is difficult because we work in English. Obviously, that's my excuse. Is that I spend most of my day talking in English, so learning French is challenging. But other than that, like I love it here.
Cool.
Ok, donc les gars, petite traduction.
Je t'embête juste 2
I
secondes.
talk too long.
Tu me mets en mode streamer pour pas qu'il y ait les notifs. Ça te dérange pas.
Là, ok, ouais. Parce que ça va être les traductions,
Vas-y.
les phrases sont très longues. Hein, mais...
En
gros, les gars, traduction synthétique. Il a bien aimé la France, mais il a pas trop visité les villes parce que quand il y allait, il a dû enchaîner
vite partir.
Pour vite partir, que ce soit pendant les events, etc. Voilà, les gars.
Non, tu peux faire mieux que ça, gros.
Il a bien apprécié Lyon et Nice, par exemple. Voilà. Ouais. Il n'a pas spécialement appris le français parce que forcément il travaille en anglais, donc il est resté dans sa zone de confort. Un effort, et ça, c'est toi la traduction.
Non, mais c'est trop dur là, il y a trop de choses à retenir, je ne peux pas me souvenir de tout.
Okay.
C'est nos faits qu'il va falloir raccourcir les phrases parce que je ne peux pas me souvenir de tout.
Nasty, comment ça, c'est les questions en haut de la liste.
Tu veux que ok. Bon, c'est bon, on se satisfait vraiment de cette traduction de la part de.
Parce que non, mais le fake, je comprends, mais c'est juste impossible de retenir. C'est impossible.
You can't reminder.
Ouais, I can't
I'll
remember
keep
everything.
it
But
shorter.
it's.
I'll answer shorter.
I'm sorry, but I'm not
Yeah,
a professional.
yeah.
We need to do shorter because I can't remember.
Yeah.
Kaylen
Yeah.
do it better.
No,
Okay.
I never understand how Kaylen does it either, because I don't even remember what I said at the beginning of my own answer.
Okay.
Great. Okay. First question. We're going to rewind a bit. Back to obviously early spring. There's a lot of people who have watched the episodes that we had vers le titre that were made by Solary, and everyone really enjoyed them. So we think we kind of have some insights, but it's always better to have them. I mean, from your own mouth with your own words. If we go back to very early spring, like first few weeks, a lot of people kind of felt that we were underperforming, since we had some players that already knew each other, and we thought it might help for the beginning of the first matches. Is there maybe some way to explain that? Is it, I don't know, stress? Is it just, as you've always said, scrims not happening the same as competitive games?
No, I mean.
Attends, traduis la question. Ouais, just Nassi, you need to translate the question, I think. Because
La question c'était, on parle donc du début du spring. Arrête de marrer. On parle du début du spring et il y a pas mal de gens qui ont trouvé qu'on avait sous-perf par rapport à ce à quoi on pouvait s'attendre. Il y avait notamment des joueurs qui se connaissaient déjà dans l'équipe. On aurait pu peut-être se dire qu'on aurait fait un bon début. Je lui demandais voilà s'il y avait des choses qui pouvaient expliquer ça. Notamment peut-être juste du stress début de saison, ou alors les scrims qui se passaient pas du tout comme les games compétitives.
Ouais.
Yeah.
John.
Sorry, John.
Yeah, I mean, no, this one we were performing badly everywhere. It wasn't a case of not just playing well and competitive. The off season was really, really stressful for myself, but for everybody. And the season started so much earlier. I mean, no team played well. Like, our approach to coming into the first weeks was openly to draft loads of scaling because teams aren't going to close. And that should have worked if we'd have just been playing 5 out of 10. We should have gone 2-0 the very first week of the year, I think. Because we fell behind against teams, but it was literally a month earlier than normal. So everyone's used to having like a break for Christmas, then come back and start the preseason, and it was already come back
I
and
think
start.
the years before it was already January, the beginning, or it was February?
It's normally the very end of January, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this was like 2.5 weeks earlier or something. And then we had, as you've seen in the show, Azra and Scarlet had a real problem like adapting to the French lifestyle, because it's very different to what they've experienced before. And that, coupled with the huge amount of pressure, just made it kind of all like fall apart and expand on itself. So that's why it got pretty severe in the first couple of weeks, and that's why we had to make a drastic decision. But that's why we were just, I mean, they were performing badly by their own admission, like in everything. In solo queue, they stopped playing solo queue, I think, just like the whole thing. I didn't know play, but on like hidden accounts kind of stuff. Like, it was very difficult because it's a massive change, coupled with a very stressful off season, coupled with suddenly the LFL level going up massively. So it was just kind of all the worst factors together that made it really bad.
Ok, bah, pour le coup c'est bon, je vais traduire, I'm going to translate. Donc en gros, le début de saison, ce qu'il dit, c'est que ça a commencé vachement plus tôt que ce à quoi il était habitué d'habitude. Donc en gros, généralement c'est fin janvier, début février, alors que là c'était juste après les fêtes de Noël, donc au moment où tu traînes pas vraiment. Il dit que donc vu qu'en plus c'était très stressant, de commencer la compète à ce moment-là. De plus, avec les joueurs qui venaient à Tours, c'était pas forcément dans leur environnement habituel, donc ils stressaient aussi par rapport à ça. Donc tout couplé, c'était pas forcément le mieux pour perf. En plus de ça, il parlait aussi c'est pour ça qu'il jouait le late game, c'est parce que c'est plus simple quand tu es un peu stressé de jouer des compos un peu late game, et c'est ce que tout le monde faisait. Et donc il disait qu'en fait, clairement, au début de la saison, personne ne jouait bien. En fait, c'est juste que eux, ils ont encore moins bien joué, dû à sûrement d'autres d'autres raisons, dont le stress dont on a parlé, mais que en fait, ouais, la plupart des équipes, en gros, ils claquaient des fesses, quoi. Voilà.
C'est très bien dit. T'as parlé du fait que même les joueurs eux-mêmes, ils s'en rendaient compte, ils avaient du mal en solo queue, ils ont joué sur des comptes un peu ghost. Pardon?
Il traduit.
Ah oui, non, tu traduis ou tu fais quoi?
Ouais, je traduis.
Il finit la traduction, il complète.
Okay, ouais.
Il parlait du fait que justement, même les joueurs eux-mêmes savaient qu'ils étaient pas du tout la meilleure version entre guillemets du joueur qu'ils pouvaient être, et ça a rendu le début de saison très compliqué. If we can maybe just move forward in the timeline, end of spring, we missed playoffs by nothing. I mean, it was literally so close. What consequences did this end of the spring have on the period between both splits? How did you manage to, I don't know, maybe just keep the team motivated? And it's a bit of a cheeky question, but did you consider making changes in the roster at that time?
Yeah, we considered making changes. What I do, especially, we haven't done one this split, which we can get into later, but in between the splits and going into a new season when you know you're with the same structure overall, I like to do a big debrief and have, the things that worked for us and things that didn't work. And then we try and kind of come up with new ideas and new processes to combat the things that didn't work. So we started looking at positional coaching to help Keo, for example.
It was your idea, or it was an player idea for the positional coach?
No, it was my idea.
Okay.
One of the things that we obviously after that first split, we'd be silly to not consider roster change as well. But from my point of view, with the way that the split had gone, there were two things that I was adamant about: is that we didn't provide a good enough environment to say whether Keo could be a LFL level top player, and we also saw, I think, in moments that he really could be, even in competitive. I mean, he's always been very good in scrims the whole time.
Okay.
But so with those two things, I was adamant that we weren't going to change anything there. The thing we did explore too is making some changes so that we could do things in person. But Scarlett and Az are incredibly good players and obviously have that inbuilt synergy as well. So in the end, we decided the best decision was to work out how we would do the best in remote rather than swapping and just hoping, because I mean, I don't want to get too long-winded, but the problem in esports a lot is because people think so short-term, it's quite a lot of luck. People...
you flip a change, you change a player and you just flip for the next level.
I mean, people say like super teams don't work in esports a lot, and they don't mostly because, well, I mean, a lot of reasons, but I think one of the big reasons is that people don't really know why players work together well or not. And so sometimes it works and you get G2 from like 2018, 2019, and sometimes it doesn't work and you get way worse than you should. You get Team Liquid or whatever from now. So with the fact that we were already on the right path with this group, we thought it was best to stay remote with the players that we had and try and explore other options to getting a better performance. The other thing that I'll say a lot is that when you have a league as strong as the LFL, best of ones, I mean, I think they're really stupid, basically.
I think it's the opinion of everybody. I think.
Yeah, I mean, any team that gets a lead can beat any other team. Like, maybe you could make an exception in the first splits, sometimes through, but the point is that if you fall behind early to these players, no matter what team it is, they can win that best of one just because of people know how to close out games now, and that everyone's at the level. Like the level of the LFL now is definitely higher than a couple of years ago the LEC, you know, and everyone gets better. And the problem is because it's a snowbally game, everyone gets better at closing out games. So a best of one can really show you almost nothing. There's like, I mean, even this split, right? We needed by the end, 2 more wins. I can literally think of like at least 1 or 2 things where it's like this one decision cost the game, and it's like, okay, so you're talking about 2 decisions being different in or 3 decisions being different in a year, and we would have made playoffs twice. It's really strange.
It's very sad, I think, because
yeah. So I think it was definitely worth sticking with the same group, because it's not like there was no chance to make playoffs again, you know. So, so we decided to stick with the same, but for remote.
Ok. Ok, so I'm going to translate. Donc en gros, bon là on a dit beaucoup de choses. On parlait donc de fin de saison, l'entre-deux split, ce que ça a engendré. En gros, lui, donc ce que disait John, c'est qu'il aime bien prendre vraiment le temps de faire des gros débriefs à la fin du split pour voir les choses qui vont pas, les choses à changer, etc. Lui de base, il voulait pas forcément faire de changement de roster, mais c'est une question qui a été évoquée, il me semble, si j'ai bien compris. En gros, lui, ce dont il parlait, c'est qu'ils auraient pu faire des changements sur certains joueurs, mais le problème, c'est que ça aurait flippé en fait. C'est vraiment ce qu'il disait, c'est que tu flippes, que le joueur va bien s'intégrer dans la structure, que ça va marcher, etc. Ou sinon, tu joues plutôt un truc où, on va dire, c'est un peu plus sécurisé et tu sais déjà, tu as déjà une idée de comment ça va se passer. Et donc, lui, c'est plutôt vers ça qu'il a voulu s'orienter. Ensuite, il parlait du format aussi qui était un peu frustrant parce que c'est que du BO1, donc il y a beaucoup de games qui vont jouer à 1-2 décisions. Et donc en fait, quand tu arrives après et que tu dois faire un point sur ce qui s'est passé de mal dans la game, tu es là, bon, bah, on a juste fait 2 mauvaises décisions et on perd la game sur ça. Et c'est peut-être à cause de ça qu'on va pas aller en playoff cette année. Et c'est vraiment, je pense, frustrant pour eux à ce niveau-là d'avoir que des BO1 alors que la ligue est très stack, que le niveau fait que augmenter et que. Donc c'est pas forcément représentatif du niveau des équipes. Donc voilà, je pense à peu près pour ce qu'il a dit. Je sais pas si tu as des choses à rajouter, Nasty ou Jock.
I have a question. We don't do any BO3 with this roster. Did you think we have maybe a better chance to beat other team in BO3 and not in BO1?
I'm not sure. It's hard to say. It's not so much that a best of one format is bad for us specifically. The reason it is bad is because it doesn't really tell you who's a better team. So it could be that in best of threes we would have been dead last. I don't think so, but it could be. The point is just when you're making decisions about rosters, thinking, I mean, look at Game Ward, right? They made no changes. They went from not only a lower position than us, but I feel like we're the worst team throughout the whole split, compared to us, not the worst overall.
Okay.
And then now they were second for most of the season, and like they were looking really good.
I have a question on that because you speak about Game World, and I think a thing surprised me at the beginning of the split, of the summer split, is it feels like we begin to train a little late like par rapport, comment on dit par rapport là, Nasty, vite fait?
C'est pour dire quoi après?
En gros, on a commencé tard par rapport à d'autres équipes.
Ah oui, bah we started later than the other teams.
Ouais, and for example, Game World, which starts very early, like better than us at the beginning of the split, and we had like some difficulty. So I wanted to know your opinion about that.
We actually started earlier than anyone this split. It was strange. I was really disappointed with our performance at the beginning because we'd been doing a week of scrims before we were Game Ward's first scrim, I think, and that was after a week of us playing. But it looked like that, and I'm not.
No, it looked like that. Because
it looked
I
like
was
we
like
were,
at the beginning of the split, I was like, okay, so we are like most of the team is playing together since 1 year and a half, and we feel like it's like things we had before. We just lost it, and we need like every speed to rebuild everything. And I'm like that's strange.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very strange start because we had our longest off season ever by miles, and you know, I mean, I don't really know. I don't really know what to think about it because, in a way, it's like it looked like almost that the longer off season was worse, but I don't think that's something to learn from it either. You know. But yeah, it really looked like that. As soon as the game started, it was like, yeah, it's just different. It was just very different. But we had I think like a full month of doing stuff before, so because obviously we had the luxury compared to some teams of not going to E-Masters and stuff, but we were scrimming during E-Masters because that's how you find good teams. But yeah, I mean, I thought the same. You know, looking from the outside, I would think the same based on our games early on. But that's sometimes just how it goes.
Because you don't have the idea about the reason of that.
I mean, one of the things with League in general, and just high performance in general, is that there's so many things that go into it. There's kind of so many things that could be wrong, and it's very hard to identify what the actual wrong thing is. And it's the same in the game too, because an individual mistake that could happen in a game might be a mistake or a decision that never happens in practice and just happens one time out of 100, but that one time happens to be in a competitive game and it loses you the game. In which case, then should you work on it if you're doing it right every other time? So it's really hard to tell. This is what I mean, is that if you just look at this split and you had to draw some conclusion, it would even look like a longer off season was worse for this group of players for whatever reason. But I don't think that's the conclusion you should draw. So it's really hard. I mean, the thing that we've struggled with for the whole year and a half is playing under pressure and playing in a competitive game compared to playing in a scrim game. And we've tried loads of different ways to combat that. Near the end, I think the new way we were trying, or the way we were playing, was, I think, closer to what we could play. But still, you know, when the pressure started to come on and it looked like actually we can do this, suddenly we started to get nervous again and go to old habits. So that's what I mean. Both the splits, it is due to the strength of roster, but strength of schedule. But both the splits have been like very streaky, because it's almost like when we were the underdog in spring, for example, I think we were playing much better, and then suddenly after Nice we were second place, and we came into the next week like, oh, we need to be careful and we can't risk anything because now we're in such a good position. Playoffs are so pretty sure, like we just have to be, but then we're not. I don't think we're a very good team like that. I don't think anyone is. Again, at this level, it might work at a slightly lower level, but if you play like within yourself and like cautious, you will lose to good teams, basically.
Ok. En gros, donc pour traduire, ce que je lui ai demandé, c'est que on parlait de GameWard, et donc je dis qu'il y avait des équipes comme GameWard où pour le Summer, ils avaient commencé à s'entraîner très tôt, et que nous, lorsqu'on avait vu l'équipe au début du Summer, on avait l'impression qu'en gros, ils n'avaient pas trop train parce qu'ils avaient un peu perdu les automatismes, etc. Et donc du coup, ce qu'il m'a dit, c'est que non, au contraire, en fait, ils avaient vraiment train à peu près comme GameWard, donc longtemps à l'avance. Simplement, dû à pas mal de choses, en fait, il me disait qu'on comprenait que de l'extérieur, on puisse penser ça, parce qu'en fait, l'équipe, elle jouait pas vraiment comme elle avait l'habitude, et c'était très compliqué parce qu'il y a tellement de facteurs qui peuvent expliquer ça, en plus des facteurs qui vont être en game officiel, mais qui vont pas être en practice. Donc, tu te retrouves en fait à devoir régler des choses que tu avais jamais vues avant, et par exemple, il y a une erreur qui va arriver peut-être, ce qu'il disait, donc une game sur 100, et que en fait, pas de chance, ça arrive sur la game en offi, et donc là, pour régler ce genre de choses que tu fais jamais, c'est un peu compliqué par rapport à ça.
Du résumé.
Bien résumé.
Vous voulez rajouter des choses ou...
Du coup, moi, c'est bon. Si tu veux continuer la liste des questions qu'on avait préparées, Nest.
Yep. We...
Oh, je demande à Jokun d'arrêter de se foutre de ma gueule quand je parle en anglais.
Non, c'était juste une phrase, désolé.
Next, if we can, just maybe look ahead. What's coming up for you guys? Obviously, the Coupe de France, so the French Cup, we don't have dates yet. So it's kind of complicated to talk about that. Afterwards, are you looking into your different options? If so, is Solary one of the best ones you have? And if so, what will be kind of your priorities if you stay at the club? Both in terms, like personally, what would you want to change on your side, and what would be the things you want to see changing within the team?
Yeah, I'll. Shall I answer like one part at a time?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
So I don't.
No, it's a big question. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can start with the French Cup, because that happens before the end of everyone's contracts. So even if we don't have exact dates, we know it's going to happen in this contractual year. I'm not actually entirely sure what we are going to do with it. I have some ideas and some things that are a bit more kind of use it to experiment, I guess would be the best way to say it, because it's a great opportunity to try some things out that you might want to take into the next project, into the next year. So we might be doing it in a similar way as we've done the rest of the year, but I'm going to be pushing for us not to do that. I don't know what's possible contractually with their rules, with our contracts, all that kind of thing. But I would like to try some things so that you can actually learn from it and say, okay, because of this, in the 2023, we'll do this and this.
Yeah, because if you want to do like...
Traduis avant de reposer une question si tu peux, Ezo.
Ouais. I'm going to translate before. Donc, ce qu'il disait, c'est que, en gros, de base, ce qu'il devrait faire, c'est faire à peu près comme il a fait l'année pour préparer la Coupe de France. Mais c'est pas ce que lui, il aimerait faire. Lui, il aimerait bien, en fait, déjà faire autre chose. Donc, s'il y a des changements à faire, de les faire déjà à ce moment-là, pour en fait avoir de la data, en gros, pour l'année d'après et commencer déjà à avoir de la data. Et du coup, moi, là, je vais lui poser la question de comment dire? Je sais même plus ce que je voulais poser comme question.
Oh non.
Ah bah, j'ai perdu ma question, je suis abattu.
Oui.
Attends, il me disait qu'il
lost his question.
voulait de la data.
Je rebondis, je te laisse réfléchir juste 2 secondes. Il a aussi parlé du fait que
vas-y.
l'année contractuelle se finit en novembre. Et donc, en théorie, la Coupe de France aura encore lieu pendant cette année-ci, entre guillemets, cette saison-ci. C'est pour ça qu'à l'origine, toutes les équipes ont l'impression que la Coupe de France ne leur permettra pas d'essayer des trucs. Et comme l'a dit Esso, dans l'idéal, John, il voudrait tenter des trucs. C'est une Coupe de France qui serait là, bien sûr, pour essayer de gagner, mais aussi pour se projeter un peu et pour voir qu'est-ce qu'il pourrait faire l'année prochaine, quoi.
Ouais, donc la question, c'est, je vais lui demander s'il veut faire des changements. En gros, son but, c'est est-ce s'il peut les faire avant la Coupe de France, ce serait pixel pour lui, quoi.
Vas-y, pose. Ça peut dire.
So my question was, if you want to do like change in the lineup, so for you, like the best will be to do it before the French Cup, if I understand well.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends what you're really looking for. The thing I was meaning to test is more different processes or ways of doing things as well. But you can have it as a testing ground for players if you wanted to. So, for example, if we did something in person, if Azra and Scarlet wanted to come, that would be the best. But it could be that based on last time, they would prefer not to, which would, I think, be fine. I mean, again, I'm not... we haven't had any conversations about this, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what's possible. It feels like if both parties are fine with it, we could just say, look, rather than November, we finish now, and then you could test something if you wanted to, because it's quite difficult, the process of interviewing and stuff, and trials. If you want to do trials for players in esports, that's the bit that's the furthest behind real sport, or traditional sport, I should say, because mostly for this pro level, you're taking someone who's played on this and this amateur team, been in this academy, has been doing this since they were 6 or whatever. Whereas we might take someone like Keo, for example, who's like a complete rookie. So you have rookies that are like Yike or someone who's actually played in NLC or played people who played in LFL2, or you have someone like Keo who played a month with the team that played only the competitive games together, kind of thing. So having a period of a couple of months to do the French Cup would be, I think, a great fun way to try that. But mostly when I was thinking about it, I was meaning specific ways, like we set up the scrim room in a certain way, we would do things in a certain way, we would do meals in a certain way, and we would do the process of how we learn in a certain way, the kind of schedule for the day. There's lots of things that I want to try out where it would be, if it comes to it, we'll try them out at the beginning of the year. But the best would be to try them out in a 1 month period or 2 month period where we obviously still want to win, but it can be a good testing ground to like show how these things would work and how they can be then adjusted. You then have a break where it's like, okay, in the break, we need to fix this, this, and this about the scrim room. We need to fix this, this, and this about how we do the food and when. We need to have this, this, and this. And that can be already for when the new season starts.
Ok, en gros, il a dit que la plupart des changements, lui, c'était. Moi, je parlais de changements limite de joueurs, etc. Alors que c'était pas forcément ce qu'il voyait. Lui, c'était plutôt tout l'aspect autour du jeu, donc c'est-à-dire leur façon de s'organiser, gestion des plannings, tester un peu, même en termes de stratégie, etc. De voir ce qui va pas, et ça le permettrait en fait de le faire sur 1 ou 2 mois, tu vois, au moment pendant ce tournoi-là, et d'avoir comme ça déjà des choses à travailler au moment du break en décembre, pour qu'on ait déjà des axes de progression dès le début pour commencer le split, et qu'on sache déjà les choses qui vont pas. Donc là, par exemple, dans le cas où de Scarlett Asa, ce genre de truc, ça aurait pu permettre de voir tout de suite comment ils se sentaient sur place, de voir comment ça fitait, et de faire les changements si on a besoin de les faire à ce moment-là, et pas forcément au milieu d'un split, ce qui est pas le mieux pour les perfs.
Nickel.
Une question from the chat. Yes. People are not sure anymore, and myself, I am not sure about Steelback and Keo. Solary talk about 2023 contracts, and in database Riot they are for 22. So I don't really know.
Wait, their contract is ending now?
Yeah.
In the database, Solary told us it's 23.
I was under the impression that they both had 2-year contracts, but I mean, I wasn't in the database until a month ago, so I don't know.
It's not very accurate.
Yeah, I don't know whose fault that is, but yeah, the connection between Solary and the database seems to be a little bit broken. So I'm not sure. As far as I know, that they're both contracted for 2 years, starting at the beginning of this year.
Okay.
So they're contracted for next year as well.
Ok, donc a priori les contrats ce serait bien en 2023, et la database c'est pas très update très souvent quoi.
Exactement. These are going to be the questions that seem pretty obvious when we have the coach on stream. How would you see yourself moving to next year, next split, in terms of roster changes? Do you have maybe a personal preference when it comes to balancing out rookies and experienced players? And if so, how do you kind of see it happening in Solary in the event of you staying with us?
Yeah. So I actually forgot I didn't answer that part.
No worries.
I am talking with Solary, but I'm also going to be exploring options with other teams too, and it just depends how things shake out. The thing for me that I really want, and I'm approaching all the teams with this, is I want a longer term contract with longer term thinking from the organization as well as me, and a clear goal. So what internally, this is the budget and this is what we want to achieve. It could be, and to be honest, that already is better than anything else. So my personal goal, my personal preferred goal, I think the one that's smartest, especially for a team like Solary, where we don't have the budget to compete with KC or Vitality or something, would be to develop talent and to try and, okay, so it's a 3-year contract and we want you to put as many people in the LEC in that 3 years as possible. Or I'm open to, like I said, I'm kind of open to anything, because just that longer term thinking in itself is already such a benefit for someone who coaches like I coach, where I'm very focused on trying to create a good environment for high performance and trying to bring out the absolute best in people, which is probably, my biggest regret from this year, is that we weren't able to do that. And that means you can make decisions that justify themselves further down the line. So working with a nutritionist, for example, is not going to help you this split, probably. It might, it might well. You probably wouldn't notice it if it did. You wouldn't be able to say that was because of working with a nutritionist. But over a 3-year period, absolutely, it's going to be beneficial. Working with sports psychologists to improve how we deal with pressure is going to be great in a longer period of time. But a split, while we think about a split as 6 months, the actual split itself is really only a couple of months. And that is not long enough time to even build a good relationship with the player, let alone start working on, here's some things that you might want to change or build into your system. So regardless of whether it's like, okay, we're going to up the budget and we're going to win EU Masters and we're going to destroy the LFL in the next 3 years, or we're going to develop talent, or we're going to focus specifically on developing French talent and French teams, or we're going to be the most open team and we're going to work out all the ways that we can bring fans on the journey and stream as many of our scrims as possible. Like whatever the goal is, obviously at each point you have the goal and you still want to win, just because
I think
I always want to win.
You can do both. Huh? You can develop
exactly.
talent and win a EU Master. Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm okay with that personally.
That's the ideal. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so those are the big things for me. Focusing going forward is longer term thinking and the ability to put in place some of the things that I want to do, which should maybe sound more experimental to an esports kind of team, to focus on longer term results, because I think that's the only way to compete, unless you're going to spend ridiculous, and even then you see what happened to KC, like you can't. The league is so stacked that even if you spend whatever it is 10-20 times as much on the roster as we do, you're not guaranteed to make it to EU Masters. So it's tough, but it's exciting. But the thing would be longer term thinking and a clear internal mandate, like this is what you're aiming towards, as well as obviously we want to get the best performance possible.
Ok. Alors, pour traduire, donc déjà ce qu'il disait, c'est que c'était pas sûr que techniquement qu'il restait chez Solary, c'est-à-dire que son contrat se termine maintenant et que lui regarde aussi ses options qu'il a à côté. De toute façon, lui, ce qu'il veut, c'est un projet long terme. Ce qu'il expliquait, c'est que ce qui l'intéressait, c'était vraiment de faire quelque chose donc sur le long terme avec des joueurs qui vont peut-être être en contrat sur plusieurs années. Lui, il voyait aussi tout ce qui était environnement, et ce qui l'intéressait le plus, en fait, c'était de créer l'environnement pour perf le mieux et en gros, on va dire avoir le potentiel maximum, on va dire montrer le potentiel maximum des joueurs lors des games compétitives et les faire vraiment monter. D'ailleurs, c'était son plus gros regret de cette année parce qu'il n'a pas réussi à le faire d'après lui cette année. Ensuite, il parlait de toute la partie Solary, donc oui, donc les projets, en gros, il va pas nous dire qu'on va avoir un investissement indien et que d'un coup on va commencer à tout gagner et on va acheter des joueurs à 2 millions. En gros, lui, vous voyez plutôt le truc dans le sens où on a notre team, on essaye plutôt de former des talents, donc ce serait plutôt des talents, donc que ce soit des rookies, limite peut-être même des Français, donc des rookies un peu français, et d'être donc plutôt une team qui essaye de faire sortir des nouveaux talents et dans le but de les envoyer plus haut en LEC, etc. quoi. Et qu'après, eux, ils aillent perf plus haut. Et donc, nous, d'être un peu en fait un centre de formation pour les jeunes joueurs sur le long terme. Donc, c'était vraiment plutôt ça sa volonté. Après, je veux bien que parce qu'il n'a pas répondu au rapport au nombre de rookies et expérience dans la line-up.
C'est vrai.
Si tu peux lui demander.
Do you mind just answering the part where we asked if you have a personal preference in balancing out the experience and the kind of rookie numbers of players in the same team?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to what your goal is. So I do think that at the moment, it's all as well depending on the market in a way. So a few years ago, especially before the LEC, rookies were really, really, really undervalued. But now, partly because of teams like Mad Lions and because teams don't get demoted from the top league, they then overvalue rookies, and then other teams do as well. So I think if you were just to put together the best roster that I possibly could, I think it would probably have a lot of veterans on, only because I think they're the best players outside of the LEC, because they should be in the LEC and people are just picking a no-name over them. But I think for me personally, I like valuing the attitude much higher than the play. So wherever that comes, I would say it's probably more likely to come from rookies, as sad as that sounds to say, because people who've been in the system for a long time and have been exposed to what I would consider bad practice or bad approaches to teams, or like negative, I should say, not bad, can often come with that huge amount of baggage, whereas rookies are more like a fresh slate. And if you had, I don't know, a couple of people that you worked with before, and you know they have the right attitude and they help everyone around them, they make everyone around them better with the energy that they bring, and then you bring in rookies to that, they'll kind of more likely mold onto that. I think probably what's always best is some sort of balance. But I do think actually, if you put together the best 5 players outside of the LEC, they would all be, I think they'd all be veterans. Like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head now, but I think, down the line, it would all be people who have played in the LEC. But that's more based on them than on us, on the LEC deciding that for some reason, if you've got a name that we recognize, you're not good. Whereas who was it last year? Like Senkux or someone? I can't remember who changed his name, and suddenly there was loads of hype around this guy. And it was like, no, it's the same guy. You just didn't care last year when he was not in the LEC because you recognised his name from season 3 when he wasn't that good, and it's just it's really crazy. So ERLs is a bit like picking up the pieces that the LEC doesn't want. So we were talking to a few people at the beginning of the year who were very interested in coming to us, who ended up going to LEC places. And obviously that's the right, well, not obviously, but often that's the right decision for them. And so we kind of just have to build with the best that's left, which is why I think actually the best ERL roster now would have, I mean, I won't go into names, but I think they'd all be veterans.
Ok, donc ce qu'il a dit, c'est que, alors par rapport aux rookies, en gros, avant, c'était pas forcément la mode, entre guillemets, de prendre des rookies en LEC, mais maintenant, ça a beaucoup changé. Et donc, lui, ils sont un peu dépendants de ça, par rapport à quels rookies vont venir ou pas. Ce qu'il disait, c'est que par exemple, des joueurs, en gros, la LEC, ils avaient un peu un problème en mode, s'ils avaient entendu un nom d'un joueur qui était reconnaissable et qui a pas fait une très bonne perf il y a 3 ans, bah, il va être direct barré des listes, alors que ça se trouve le mec peut être très bon actuellement et qu'ils sont ils sont un peu trop focus sur prendre que des nouveaux noms, que du neuf, etc. Lui disait que de son point de vue, ce qu'il aimait bien avec les rookies, c'est que quand ils arrivaient, c'était comme une page vierge, ils n'avaient pas forcément de mauvaises habitudes. Et pour lui, l'attitude, donc je pense en entraînement, etc., c'est quelque chose de très important et même de plus important que le joueur en lui-même en termes de perf pure. Et que donc prendre un joueur d'expérience, ça peut être compliqué car tu vas prendre un joueur qui potentiellement a des très mauvaises habitudes, avoir un comportement un peu du coup pas en accord avec ce que toi tu veux mettre en place. Donc techniquement un rookie dans ce sens-là, c'est beaucoup moins risqué. Et puis juste finir, j'ai vu une question dans le chat où on parlait de la vision, est-ce que c'était viable, cette vision-là de former des rookies. En gros, ce qu'il disait aussi tout à l'heure, c'est que, entre guillemets, on n'a pas de en fait, clairement, on n'a pas de budget par rapport aux autres équipes, donc en fait, on n'a pas vraiment le choix. Tu vois, on peut pas faire comme, si on veut prendre, tous les meilleurs joueurs et cetera. En fait, il faut forcément, entre guillemets, «flip» sur, des rookies, ou, faire monter des talents qui sont pas connus parce qu'ils vont coûter logiquement pas cher. En fait, tu vois, si les mecs les sous-cotent, on peut pas prendre des mecs qui sont cotés hyper cher et qu'on connaît super bons parce qu'en fait, on n'a pas l'argent tout simplement. Donc, on va dire que c'est la vision la plus viable pour, réussir à avoir une team qui peut un jour justement aller chercher, plutôt qu'aller prendre des joueurs pas ouf, mais qui sont connus, faire plein de joueurs pas ouf et faire une équipe pas ouf du coup. Donc tu vois, vaut mieux essayer de tenter en créant des nouvelles choses avec des
Être
rookies.
ambitieux.
C'est ça.
Yes. This is kind of a different question, but I think it's still interesting because not everyone watches the same leagues all year round. What inspirations do you have? From which leagues do you usually pick up? I don't know, drafts, macro plays, or anything else? Maybe you and some of the players too, because we know some players prefer, I don't know, the LPL or something else.
Yeah. Steelback's a big fan of the LPL. That's one we use quite a lot. I have a really big thing in teams that I never want to do something because they do it in LPL or because the best team in the world does this. My thing is, if you can't tell me why they do it, then we're not doing it. So it's often easier to how would you say it, like take apart what they do and then learn from it and reverse engineer their plays. So that does still happen a lot, but I never let players just say in LPL they do this, it's always okay. In LPL they do this because of this reason. Or what does sometimes happen is someone makes a point that they think's right, and then someone's arguing against it, and eventually it's like, yeah, but V5 do it. Like it does come to that sometimes. But I look all over. It's obviously there's so much time that it takes to look at all the leagues that mostly I look at the matches either that I'm interested in already, or I have enough people that I talk to about league that someone will mention it to me from another team, another, like different, not necessarily other LFL people, but as in like from other leagues or LEC or something. They'll just mention this, oh, have you seen this thing or the way they do this? And then I kind of scour highlights and go back into the games that looked very interesting. In terms of the meta itself, one thing again that I believe is there's no such thing as the meta in like this overall concept that applies to you. So meta is just most effective tactic available. That's what it stands for. And the most effective tactic for our team is not the same as others. Unfortunately, I would say, based on our team, I think that's something we struggle with for the whole year and a half.
Because it's based on the champion pools, etc.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. I mean, there are champions that are just really strong that we need to be able to play, and sometimes we weren't able to, and that can create problems. But for example, in the last few weeks of the split, the LFL still massively valued Corki, where it had fallen off in all other regions. So that was even kind of like the whole league, and there's other things like that, like the Lucian army like completely disappeared in certain places, but in China they were still playing it, and then people maybe started to bring it back, and you have there's a lot to balance. But I think when it comes to plays, I get them from anywhere. I would get them from the LCS if I ever saw one that was that was interesting. The point is, like, where it comes from is not that useful, because when you're playing League, there's as if infinite variables. So you'll never be in the exact same space again. So it doesn't matter. You're setting up for this Baron. You could set up with this same team comp versus that same team comp at the same time in the game. There's still going to be loads of things that are different. And so all you can do is look at examples and take what you can from them. And so the more examples you can look at, the better. So for example, when we were learning how we wanted to play around with the Baron for this year, we played scrims and it was a focus. And if it became an issue, and if it became a thing in the scrim, we'd look at it. But often scrims are kind of decided before 20 minutes anyway. So instead, we look at like 10 examples in 20 minutes, which is way better than one in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So you use them a lot for inspiration, and you try and reverse engineer them, because just doing what whoever Gen G do, partly it might not work for your players. Partly you don't know if they did that thing and then on comms they were like, oh shit, we've messed it up, and you're gonna watch it and be like, we have to do it exactly like that, because so like it's always important to look at why are they doing the thing and use that as your reason if you agree with it, and if you disagree with it, then we do something different.
Ok. Donc ce qu'on lui demandait, donc c'est les inspirations qu'il avait, notamment au niveau des drafts. Il disait que par exemple, des joueurs comme Steelback aimaient beaucoup la LPL, mais que lui, il se méfiait un peu de ça, parce que dans le sens où si un joueur vient et lui dit ok, Edward Gaming, ils ont fait ça, faut absolument qu'on fasse pareil. Déjà, lui, sa première question, c'était ok, mais pourquoi est-ce qu'ils ont fait ça, et si tu sais pas, bah on le fera pas. Et en gros, c'est vraiment d'essayer de comprendre pourquoi ils font ça, parce que ça se trouve, en fait, la team peut-être a fait ce move-là en mode putain, en fait, on a int, on n'aurait pas dû faire ça, et toi, tu vas le reproduire parce que tu veux faire exactement comme eux, alors qu'en fait, c'est du hinting. Donc, si tu comprends pas déjà ce que c'est, ça sert vraiment à rien de le faire. Et donc, c'est pour ça que lui, déjà, il s'attache pas forcément à une seule ligue, il vraiment il regarde partout et on va dire il s'en fout un peu d'où ça vient. L'important, c'est de prendre ce qu'il y a à prendre de ça, de prendre cet exemple-là et de voir ce qu'il peut adapter. Parce qu'il parlait aussi de la méta, et il expliquait bien que la méta, ça change vraiment de n'importe quelle équipe, même de n'importe quelle ligue, ça change. Parce que la méta, en fait, c'est vraiment, en gros, tu crées la team qui est le plus adaptée à ta team, ce qui n'est pas forcément vrai dans tous les cas. Parce que tes joueurs, que ce soit au niveau de leur champion pool, leur façon de jouer, ils vont pas forcément être à l'aise avec tous les types de jeux. Et en fait, juste comprendre la méta, c'est simplement faire en sorte d'avoir la team la plus forte possible pour tes joueurs à un moment T. Et pas forcément de copier ce que va faire Genji, parce qu'en fait, tu joues, ça se trouve pas du tout comme Genji, tes joueurs, tu vois, ton mid, c'est pas forcément Chovy. Donc, il faut que tu t'adaptes par rapport à ce que tu as et comment est-ce que tu veux le faire. Voilà.
Ouais, super complet. It's really interesting, I think. What I found interesting in your answer was the fact that when you go back to the literal meaning of meta, so the acronym, it's actually quite natural to understand that it depends on the teams, and not on just how 10 teams are going to be playing the game for 2 months long. Anyways, next question is kind of, it's more personal, but it's also about your vision as like how you think you should be as a coach. How do you see your own relationship with the players? I think there's a tendency sometimes to want to for people to put, I don't know, etiquettes on the role. Maybe you want to be the father, maybe you still want to be a friend, maybe you want to be a role model. How do you see your spot in Solary with the actual team?
I think personally, I function best with more of a vertical relationship, is how I describe it. So horizontal is like, completely horizontal is like we're mates and we discuss it together, and I'm the sixth voice. And completely vertical is you do exactly what I say, doesn't matter. For me, it's kind of, it's not one extreme or the other, and it varies on the team. So again, the more rookies, the more vertical I think I would be. Partly because they're more open to that kind of thing, but also because I'm more maybe specifically to teach them. The thing with a roster like this, for example, is the level of knowledge of the roster is already so incredibly high that it's almost like, it's not quite, but it's almost like it's not that I'm teaching them how to play League of Legends. All I'm doing is teaching them how to be a team. And I think the dynamic always works best when the head coach especially is much more vertical, and then Rafa, for example, is much more like jokey and friendly with them. He said, I don't know if he already has, he said he was going to share some of his presentations, and he should definitely be doing like tweets for Solary or something, because some of them are absolutely hilarious and that kind of thing. Because you are going to have to make tough calls, both in terms of, you know, when it comes to it on in Champ Select or in just in general. The behavioral one is always a big thing for me, is that in a lot of teams, if there's behaviors that are not helpful, I mean, you technically describe them as toxic, but not toxic like League of Legends people mean toxic. I mean, like a psychologist would mean toxic.
Yeah, like unhealthy.
Yeah, like it, like I'm trying to think of a different way of saying it because it means something different in esports. But anyway, slightly unhealthy behaviors are often start off in very subtle ways. And what happens in a lot of teams, and what happened a lot in this team, one of my regrets is that if the coach calls you out on it, it's like, oh, I didn't think of it like that, and all this kind of thing. And then you do need some of that verticality to just be like, look, I'm the head coach. I'm saying this is not acceptable. It doesn't matter where you disagree. You can be angry at my decision if I say don't talk to your teammates like that, but it doesn't matter. So you do need that like verticality, I think there too. But it's all about what works best for you as a player as a coach and with your players. So with this group of players, I'm like this. With the different group of players, I'm like a different thing. I think for me, I would tend to a lot more verticality than most esports coaches do, which I guess is due to coming from sport, and my first experiences with esports were almost always like, all this is way more efficient when you do it in rugby or in football or something because of that verticality. But of course, it's very, very different, and there's absolutely not one is not better than the other. And there'll be some coaches that are better suited for certain rosters. So there could be a coach that's amazing with veterans and is very horizontal and is great at being that sixth voice and brings out the best in them that way, and then might really struggle with rookies who are all looking to him to be the only or the main voice, where he's not used to that role. So that's kind of a non-answer, but I hope it gives a bit more clarity.
Non, ouais. Donc du coup, je traduis. Ce qu'il disait, c'est qu'on lui demandait la relation qu'il avait par rapport aux joueurs. Il disait déjà par rapport à ce qu'il apportait aux joueurs, il s'adaptait en fonction de la team. Donc dans notre cas, on avait énormément d'expérience, on a énormément de connaissances sur le jeu. Donc c'était pas forcément sur ça qu'il allait se baser. Il allait pas forcément leur apprendre le jeu, mais plutôt à être une équipe. Et que ce qu'il va faire, ça dépend vraiment de la team et des gens. Par contre, lui, il vient en fait du sport, donc c'est ce qu'il disait à la base en tant que coach. Et donc, c'est important d'avoir pour lui une certaine verticalité. Donc, c'est-à-dire que il y a des moments où en draft, etc., il va falloir qu'il fasse même des calls un peu compliqués. Il faut que les mecs lui fassent confiance, tu vois, et qu'ils aient, et que quand ils donnent entre guillemets un ordre, il n'y a pas oui, je suis pas content. En fait, tu vois, genre, tu t'es et t'écoutes en gros. Sur certaines choses, pas sur tout, mais sur une partie des choses. Et pour lui, ça c'était important parce que ça permettait de coordonner et de limiter, par exemple, tout l'aspect des comportements un peu toxiques qu'il peut y avoir. Et par contre, tout ce qui est être proche des joueurs, etc., ça sera plutôt l'assistant coach qui va se charger de toute la partie à être un peu plutôt pote, avoir une relation ami-ami en fait avec les joueurs, alors que lui, il a plutôt une relation où c'est quand même ton supérieur et il y a un lien quand même hiérarchique, donc tu dois un respect à ton coach, quoi. Et après, il disait que peut-être que lui, c'est une manière un peu plus verticale que ce qui se fait normalement en e-sport, mais c'est aussi sa manière de faire, qu'il n'y a pas vraiment de meilleure ou moins bonne manière, mais c'est comme ça que lui, en tout cas, il voit les choses.
Question
Si
from
j'ai
the
bien
chat.
résumé.
Question from the chat from Iwa. I don't know if you remember, he was a ADC from
I
Solary.
remember. Yeah.
Did you prefer human aspect or more technique on coaching?
Human aspect for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more to elaborate on that. I like both sides. I love the game, and I love the details of the game. And I think that if I devoted myself to that, I think that would be okay too. But I would say that the other side is more my strength, and it's almost like I could, if League died tomorrow, I could coach. I would be perfectly happy to go and coach another esport, I think, because it's the high performance and it's the nature of the space that I find so exciting. Where in esports there's enough money that you can actually do things, but not enough tradition, so that it's really hard to change things, if that makes sense. So in sport, you might have the money to make some changes, but it's the way we've been doing it for 50 years. You can't change that. Whereas in esports, if I come up with a new thing today, we can try it tomorrow. So I mean, even little things. I was talking to a chiropractor friend of mine, and one of the things that I might try in this French Cup is let's stand up during reviews. Like we can just try it, see. Whereas if I was just like, yeah, let's just change the way we do half our practice when we're practicing football at a big club, there's no way you can do that. So it's this perfect balance where we can actually do a lot of the things that I want to try in esports. But you also don't have this massive inherited wisdom that it's very hard to fight against. So it's just this really exciting space from a coaching point of view.
Ok, donc en gros, il disait que tout l'aspect humain, c'est vraiment ce qu'il préférait. L'avantage de l'e-sport par rapport au sport, c'est que ça permet vraiment de faire des changements beaucoup plus simples, que ce soit dans la méthode d'entraînement, etc., pour les joueurs, alors que c'est des choses dans le sport traditionnel qui vont prendre beaucoup de temps et d'argent. Et donc ça, c'est un des points qu'il aimait. Et puis je voulais aussi noter le fait que Iwa, mon coach personnel, essayait de prendre un peu de notes pour un peu coacher un peu mieux depuis que j'ai lancé sa carrière, donc je suis content.
Ouais, il a pris l'exemple de un de ses potes ostéo avec qui il avait des conversations, ostéopathe, et il lui disait, bah voilà, est-ce que demain, si on essaie de faire les reviews en étant debout plutôt qu'assis, est-ce que ça se tente? Et John, il apprécie ce côté flexible et adaptable de l'e-sport en tant que discipline un peu plus jeune. A contrario, quand on regarde les sports traditionnels, on a du mal à modifier les techniques qui sont en place depuis des dizaines d'années, quoi. You kind of anticipated our next question, which was about the way that you and the coaching team shared your roles within the structure. If we can maybe have a quick, I don't know, some details on the positional coach that came in for Cure. First of all, the way I saw it was that there wasn't that much information about it when Solary decided to sign it. People kind of had to dig up information and go and look him up. But was it your choice to bring him on? Were you being pushed by other people, either players or coaching or people in Solary?
No. Yeah, it was my choice. I had to push a lot to get it to happen. So the positional, I mean, I can go through the whole structure. So as head coach, I was running the reviews and the draft. So when we practiced during scrims, like I was obviously at every scrim, I was doing the draft for every scrim, and I would do the review after every game, pretty much. Although actually, we experimented with some captain scrims, is what I would call them, where Steelback or actually Joko as well would do the review, which allows me to do different things during the game, which is really useful. So for the days where we had like a new patch, for example, on the Monday and Tuesday scrims, they would actually lead the reviews. I would still be there to, maintain order, make sure everyone's stuck to the time. But that allowed me to run drafts of our scrims, like a bunch of different variations as the game was going on, because I don't have to be watching the game and making notes. And then Rafa was, as the assistant coach, he was basically helping in like every tiny little way possible that you would imagine, but also doing the really important job, which was really useful, was the like in-person scouting. So Sam was our manager and also did the analytics, and he was using the LEC program, which they've now made available to everyone else, and doing awesome work with that. But it does help to have someone just watch the games and say, okay, look, this is their tendencies of the last 4 games when they're on red side. This is how they approach Herald and all that kind of thing. And it's quite time consuming, but can be very, very beneficial. So we're still trying to work out the best ways for that to happen. But Rafa would make these presentations before the game and say, okay, look, this is their level 1. He probably has already talked to Steelback about their warding. He's definitely already talked about Joko about their jungle pathing. But then he tells everybody, this is where they normally go level 1. Here's a proposed strategy if we have a stronger level 1. Here's a proposed strategy if we have a weaker level 1. All that kind of thing, which was really, really useful. And then the positional coach, Stasko, was doing a session with each player. He did 5 sessions, or was going to do 5 sessions over the weekend, and then not in scrims, and then be in scrims Monday, Tuesday, to look at the individual things that they'd worked on specifically. So he's not watching it for the same reasons I am. One of the big things that I really don't like is when people have multiple coaches and they're all just watching the game and just pointing out things that go wrong in the game. It's like it's never worth two people's time. So he had those specific things to look at, and then he would do follow-up sessions on the Tuesday and Monday, and then do individual stuff looking at whoever we're playing against. So we looked with Keo at Cabochard's recent laning phase and certain matchups that we thought were more likely, all that kind of thing. And then Keo, actually, several of the players went out of their way themselves to buy and find their own individual coaching on top of that too. So Joko did the same thing for himself and for Keo. I know Az has done that a bunch on champions that he's struggled with. He's gone out to find like an extra help, which is something that I never told them they have to, obviously, because they would have to pay for it. But they all did because obviously they're desperate to win. So that was kind of I guess a brief overview of all the learnings. I've just realized that's going to be a nightmare to translate, so I'm sorry about that. But that's kind of the rough structure that we were working with.
En vrai, là, je vais avoir besoin d'aide pour la traduction. Je pense que j'ai pas tout retenu en vrai.
Tu veux commencer ou
Mais
tu veux que je...
en gros, vas-y, je commence et tu compléteras les choses que j'ai pas dit. En gros, donc lui, il trouvait ça bien d'avoir quelqu'un d'autre parce que lui, il s'occupe des drafts, il regarde les games, etc. Et en fait, c'est bien d'avoir quelqu'un qui peut regarder, par exemple, overall les games, pendant que d'autres vont se focaliser sur des points un peu plus spéciaux. Lui, donc dans le cas du positional coach, qui va regarder en fait un peu plus en détail chaque point et ensuite faire des reviews personnelles avec chaque personne sur, en gros, là, t'as fait ça qui va pas, etc. pour refaire, pour remettre en plus les choses. Il parlait aussi de Rafa et du rôle de Sam, où Sam, c'est tout ce qui était analytique. Donc, en gros, il refait toutes les données, etc. Ensuite, je veux bien que tu complètes.
Ouais. Pour Rafa, il a dit qu'il était très content parce qu'en fait, Rafa, il faisait énormément de travail, mais genre très pointilleux sur plein d'aspects différents du jeu. Que ce soit de regarder des games, de regarder, de review nos games, de regarder les games des autres, parfois d'aller même dans le match-up des lanes et par exemple d'aller voir n'importe quel joueur et de leur dire voilà, tel joueur que tu auras en face de toi la semaine prochaine, et bah il faisait ça. Niveau 1, on a une bonne compo, est-ce qu'on va invade, où est-ce qu'on se met? Le positional coach, c'est lui qui a poussé. C'est John qui a demandé à la structure. Voilà, je pense que ce serait une bonne chose qu'on ait ça. C'est pas une demande à l'origine, en tout cas, qui venait de la part de, je sais pas, d'un joueur en particulier ou d'autres personnes. Il est content d'avoir en fait un coach qui se concentre vraiment concrètement sur. Je vais utiliser le terme micro parce que c'est un peu celui qu'on utilise, mais sur la micro de chaque joueur. Lui, John, il pense que c'est pas du tout productif, enfin que c'est même contre-productif d'avoir plusieurs coachs, ou appelez-le comme vous voulez, qui regardent les mêmes choses dans une même game. Donc lui est très content de ne pas être celui, effectivement, qui va devoir dire à Scarlett en mode tu devrais CS comme ça sur ce champion. Parce qu'après, il y a même des joueurs, dont Scarlett, dont Joko aussi, qui sont de leur côté aller chercher des coachs perso pour s'améliorer, entre guillemets, de leur côté. Ça, c'est quelque chose, c'était une initiative qui a été prise par les joueurs, dont il l'a pas dit, mais j'imagine qu'il devait être content qu'ils s'investissent autant sur ça. Et voilà, c'était vraiment à l'origine de la question sur le positional coach. C'est vraiment, il a dit quelque chose qu'il était content d'avoir. Il a dû convaincre les gens dans la structure, mais que ça s'est fait. Et voilà, je crois que j'ai un autre.
Ça me semble bien.
Cool. This is the last question that we've written down, and then afterwards, depending on your time, we might be able to ask different ones. How do you see the impact that a community can have on a team, especially regarding the LFL days, the great opportunity that we had to meet with the players and for the players to be on stage with the public? Obviously, I mean, it's easy. You're going to say it's positive, but how positive can it be? How do you think it can make a difference maybe compared to other teams? And especially maybe regarding the timing, how helpful was it at the end of the season?
I mean, yeah.
And just I want to complete. Do you think it can be, it can rendre, merde, je sais plus le mot. It can make the structure more attractive, like a structure with a big community, like especially during a Mercato, for example.
Yeah, I wanted to. We did that last split as well. When we were looking at other, we were looking to build the roster for a year ago. we really did push that as one of the big things. It was like, what can we do as Solary that other places can't do? Maybe we're not going to offer these people as much salary. We can't say, look, we've won X number of times either. But what we can do is say, like, you can come here and actually build up your personal brand, your recognition, and interact with the community and be part of something where people actually care. The example was always, you pick just any other team, other than a couple, obviously, from the LFL. Is like they'll pay you more money, but like no one's going to care. You can be there for a year and then just disappear, and that's kind of it. So that was a big part of it. I think it's something, again, like I mentioned before, that we could lean into even more. I think it's super valuable. I mean, I think it just makes it so much more fun as well. I was saying, I think I told this to Kaylin as well, so you might hear this multiple times. But I was talking with Joko after the game in the LFL day, because it was getting quite late and we were outside like chatting to everybody, and we were both like, we're both really tired. But then like I've been on teams before where you come off stage and there's like no one, or there's like a player's mum or something there waiting. And he had the same thing. He was like, yeah, I remember being...
You speak about Gamer Origin right now.
Or like in the LEC, for example, they lead you like all the way around the whole thing, because like you don't just walk through the crowd, you go all the way around. And then you get like, you walk the whole way and then you step out and there's like 2 people waiting there. It's like this it's Solary is just so much better. And we both just had like a big laugh about that, because it's just yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's not like the sole reason that people do it or anything like that, but it is a massive part, is the like, feels like being part of something that's bigger than yourself, and or bigger than your team, like bigger than the 7 of us or the 8 of us, whatever. Which is really, really important. And yeah, just a huge amount of fun and a really unique experience. I mean, that's one of the things that I said to them on the stage before we started the draft, is like to just really enjoy this kind of experience, because firstly, playing on a big stage like that is not the same as playing in the LEC studio when there's like 50 people watching, and also playing for a team that people actually care about. Like only 2 out of 10 LEC teams get that. So like, you like savor the experience, because there's a massive crowd who's actually really energized and way more energized, even crowd in general. And then a bunch of people who are coming specifically to support you guys, is like, there's nothing that is like that in like sport. There's nothing really that can compare. So it's really important, and a great selling point, I think. And again, if it was to be a longer term project, it would have to be a crucial part of it, because we'd be stupid to not do that. And also, I think it'd be fun to kind of lean into it as much as possible.
Ok, donc il disait que pour lui c'était une énorme plus-value, parce que ça te permettait de pas tu vois, de jouer pour une vraie raison, de d'avoir donc ce qu'il disait, par exemple, Solary, qui est une structure encore plus grande que eux, tu vois, il y a plein de choses derrière, il y a pas que une team e-sport dont en fait tout le monde s'en fout. C'est vraiment, tu as une team qui est supportée par plein de gens, ça te permet aussi, donc ça c'est aussi un argument, ce qu'il expliquait pour le Mercato, c'est que les joueurs du coup qui vont passer dans des teams comme la nôtre vont généralement, ils peuvent réussir à se créer une petite communauté grâce à ça, alors que des joueurs qui vont aller dans des teams que personne ne supporte vont juste être des no-name un an après et tout le monde va les oublier. Donc ça, c'était vraiment un point positif. D'expliquer qu'aussi c'était vraiment différent, parce que bon, pour le coup il a eu l'expérience à Berlin et tu sors de la salle et en fait il y a juste la famille des joueurs qui est là et c'est tout. Alors que nous, voilà, il y avait vraiment une vraie, il y avait du monde, tu vois, il y avait une vraie petite foule et des gens vraiment hyper investis dans le projet, qui soutiennent à fond, qui crient, et ça c'est vraiment un gros plus-value. Il dit qu'il y a vraiment rien de comparable en e-sport que le fait de sentir autant de soutien, tu vois, et autant de gens derrière toi, surtout en IRL.
Ouais, carrément.
Someone in the chat say that we're gonna be even more next time, so you have to stay tuned.
It's only growing. Someone asked if you personally, do you play League? If so, do you play it like when it's on your own time? Do you play it for fun with friends, or do you try hard?
Yeah, no, I only play it for fun. So I do play. I used to try hard a bit even when I first started coaching. I was never that good. Like I never made master or anything. I was like D2, D1 as my peak, but I actually partly because I was already coaching and I knew I wanted to do that more. But I stopped taking it seriously when it used to affect my evenings. Like if I lost games, I'd actually be like afterwards.
It's like everybody.
My evening is worse because I just lost that. So now I'm like the opposite.
Yes.
I've
Because
not played
what is your position?
Anything.
Oh,
That's my point.
would you only fill?
You tag Phil?
Mostly I fill, but also so I only play. I do play like solo duo, but I don't think I've played a solo queue. I might have played one solo queue game in the last 5 years.
Like on
I
your
just
own?
always play with
Okay.
friends. So I end up having loads of accounts because I'll play with a friend and then they'd play without me and then I'd only play with them and then I'd get promoted too far and then I have to make a new one. Yes, I mean I'm not good. I know I can see what's supposed to happen and then I just can't make it happen.
It still sounds like false modesty saying you peaked at D1, D2 and saying you're not good.
Like,
when
That
you're,
was eight years ago. 8 years ago.
yeah, John the multi-role talent, as been said in the chat.
And what I just want to know, what is your main, John? Like your favorite champion?
Well, that's the thing is that I don't know if I have one. So
you have one. Don't lie to me.
I think it's in the past. I mean, I think my most played of season like 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4 was Lee Sin each year. But it was like Lee Sin, Thresh, something like they're all like different all over the place. I when a new champ comes out, I spam them to try and figure just out of curiosity. Like
so you are toxic.
First time in ranked.
You spam Yumi.
even when like I just do it out of curiosity. Like so, even Nyla, for example, like that's probably my most played of this season, only because most played is like 10. Because I get bored. Like it annoys all the people that I play with because I'll play a champion that I've played a lot in the past. But I do weird stuff as well. So, for example, like I played Lilia top a lot or mid as well.
Weird.
Yeah, I mean it's less weird now than it was when I first started. I had many people quit games in Champs League because of that. But my point is that like I would only play it once or maybe twice in a row before I do something else. So my favorite thing at the moment probably is playing bot lane with someone who'll play Senna, and then we just fifth pick something weird like Xerath or Silas or a Mumu or Nunu or something like so that I can just play different things each game basically.
Ok. Donc il disait que comme tout le monde en gros il jouait pas mal avant mais il a arrêté parce que ça le rendait un peu zinzin de jouer et genre quand tu perds ça te tique ta journée hein. De toute façon tout le monde comprend très bien ce qu'il dit. Donc au début lui ses mains c'était plutôt Thresh, Lee Sin, des trucs comme ça mais en fait il est un peu multi-role talent, il joue un peu de tout et puis il joue surtout avec ses amis sans forcément tryhard et à la fin il disait qu'en fait vu qu'il avait joué tellement les anciens champions il avait pas trop envie de les jouer donc en fait il sortait un peu les nouveaux champs toxiques qui sortaient quoi. Donc voilà et là son amusement c'était de jouer avec Senna et de jouer n'importe quoi avec genre Amumu des trucs comme ça de faire du fasting.
Quick question, and you might have already answered this on stream or somewhere else. What do you think about the durability patch that's been released now for I don't know 1 or 2 months?
Yeah, I quite like it. I think it did well. I don't know. I mean, like it's got some good things and some bad things. I think it actually weirdly hasn't made all that much difference to pro play. Because the kind of champions that were really that were kind of really hurt by it, like those snowbally assassin champions, were never all that good. It has, as you'd expect with any massive change, it did make some problems, like Nar GP versus next game GP Nar versus Nar GP kind of things. But I think in general, it didn't have anywhere near as big an impact as like the teleport change, for example, which was, I thought, potentially a very good change, but the worst time to do it. That was 2 days before our first match, and we were playing on that patch.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Again, like it would have been 2 weeks before, but it was 2 days before, and like that baffles me why they didn't realize how big an impact that would have. It felt like they thought that it meant top lane was going to be a bit different, but you've seen since then the best ADs is bot prio. Like whoever gets bot prio has at least 60% chance of winning the game because there's no teleport. So suddenly it's Jinx versus Aphelios all the time, and then when those are gone, it's like, okay, who's the next thing that can get prio? And so yeah, I mean, I think that had a much bigger difference. The durability patch, I think it's good in general. I mean, in my flex games, it's been good because the game, I feel like I've had more good games since it came out, like more games that are decided in team fights rather than just in the lane phase. But I don't know if that's just luck or it's a small sample size as well, to be fair.
Ok.
But yeah.
Donc, il disait pour la méta que ça n'avait pas énormément changé en fait de son point de vue sur l'année, qu'il y avait toujours la méta un peu snowball assassin, mais qui n'était pas incroyable, mais qui était possible, mais pas folle en gros. Lui disait surtout que c'était que en gros Riot ont un peu hint pour au niveau du patch parce que bah ils ont fait le changement, le gros changement du summer juste avant les débuts de match, 2 jours avant, donc ça a vraiment hint parce que bah, les joueurs n'étaient pas prêts à jouer sur ce patch-là et ça aurait dû être fait au moins 2 semaines avant. Lui, au final, il pense que d'ailleurs le patch est plutôt bien de son point de vue. Ça lui semble pas mal. Bon, après, de ce qu'il dit avec le nerf des TP, par contre, ça rend un peu la game où bah, il faut juste avoir la prio bot surtout pour gagner. Et généralement, ça veut dire beaucoup dans la win ou pas. Enfin, au final, quoi.
Ouais, il a rajouté aussi que lui, perso, quand il joue de son côté, ça lui fait plaisir, entre guillemets, que les games soient pas décidés sur la lane maintenant et que plus souvent, quand il est en game, c'est décidé sur un gros teamfight où il a potentiellement plus d'impact. Et pour corriger, il a pas dit qu'il savait laisser la place à la méta assassin, justement, il avait dit que c'était une méta qui existait avant et qui a disparu à cause
Non,
du
c'est ce
patch.
que j'ai dit, ouais.
Ah, ok, bon.
Ouais,
Je crois que tu l'avais dit comme ça.
ok, bon. Anyway.
I'm trying to find maybe this question in chat. Is there a player in secondary leagues or maybe foreign leagues that you follow? Maybe I don't know if it's just like personal liking or for scouting reasons.
Mostly for scouting, we kind of tend to do it all in one go or talking to people who've been doing it throughout the whole. So I've got some people I know who, for one reason or another, watch all the leagues and pay attention to everybody, but there's just not really time for that in practice. I'm always a little bit interested in people that I've worked with in the past, just seeing how they do. So like I worked very briefly with Unforgiven, for example, so I thought that was going to be hilarious when he went into LEC because they need to get him on more interviews because he's just such a character. He's amazing. And also I felt like a very, like, I don't know how you say it, like just a good pickup. Like mechanically just unbelievably insane. But yeah, I don't. There's not specific players that I'm looking at thinking all for the future, because also I don't know where I'm going to be.
Ouais.
So different projects with different goals would have different players that would be the best. So even if I was just staying at Solary, there could be multiple different approaches that they would want to take, which would then make certain players better or worse depending on that. So it's worth paying attention just very roughly, but mostly it's about having the right contacts, I think.
En gros, il disait pour le scouting qu'il n'avait pas vraiment encore de joueurs en tête, vu qu'il ne sait même pas lui exactement le projet qu'il va faire. Donc ça va dépendre du projet selon ce qu'il veut, ce qu'il veut scout et quel profil il voudrait. Il est quand même en contact avec des joueurs, donc là il avait cité Unforgiven, avec qui il a déjà travaillé par le passé, où il garde généralement toujours le contact. Mais voilà, ça se limitait un petit peu à ça pour tout ce qui est scouting. Et d'ailleurs, I wanted to ask you a question. Like if you stay at Solary next year, for you, when are you going to begin to prepare the Mercato, doing the tryout, etc. For you, where is the perfect timing to begin that?
I mean, basically as soon as possible. So if I already had an extended contract, for example, which we did talk about but couldn't reach an agreement during the split, but if I would probably start from Monday. I would have taken a week off and then start, because it's not even so much just the team, it's all the other things that you would do around it. Like I said, there's so many things that go into high performance. If I was to stay at Solary, there'd be so many things that would need to happen before we were at the position where we could actually genuinely say, like, we're giving people the best opportunity. And I'd want to kind of go through all of those things, which takes a long time, and also just the longer the better, you know. So, for example, just thinking of, like, I don't know, coach biographies that I've read. Clive Woodward, who's the first England rugby coach, I think he had 9 months before they started of planning, and I don't know how long Sir Brailsford took in the cycling, but a huge amount of time again. And that's something in esports that we don't really do. People often take a break during the off season and then work on contracts, and then that's kind of it. But this is the only time where you can really have the space to step back and think, what is really the best way of doing this? Because the only thing I know is the way we're currently doing it is not the best way. So what are we going to try? Why? What are we going to look to implement? And how will we judge if it's successful or not? So again, if we just take it as a stupid example, this idea of standing up during reviews, it's like, okay, I know why we're doing that now. I've got not only scientific evidence, but like just evidence from experts as well. And how are we going to measure if it's going to have the results that I want? Because if after a month it's just like, well, I like it, then maybe that's the right way to do it. But maybe we should be a bit more kind of precise with it, and then just be open to whatever comes out. But there's so many systems that could be upgraded and could be refined, and then there's the first impression, I think, is so important, and making sure that first impression is right when suddenly 7 or 8 or 9 people are going to use our scrim room rather than just me is hard, you know. So we have to work out what could possibly go wrong, and let's fix it preemptively. So yeah, I mean, if I had a contract already, I would start tomorrow. But the problem is that different teams have different schedules. So even if LFL teams might be starting to look already, or other ERL teams that haven't made EU Masters might be starting to look already, the ones that have made EU Masters are going to look later. LEC teams that make Worlds are going to look even later. And it could be that people are often quite slow anyway, because they've never seen the value in doing stuff in off season, and so they've used that time as an organization to do other things and just work on who we're going to get as our roster. So I mean, for me, again, it's just another one of those changes that as soon as you start talking about 3 years rather than 6 months or even a year, it's one of those changes that's obvious. But because most people think of a year or less, honestly, it doesn't happen, if that makes sense. Like, it's something I think that will happen, but it doesn't happen currently.
Ok. Alors, pour la traduction, donc ce qu'il disait, c'était que en général, lui, il aimerait bien, en fait, il n'a pas réussi apparemment à établir un contrat avec Solary. Ils ne se sont pas encore mis d'accord sur quelque chose, c'est ce qu'il disait. Mais que, en gros, lui, si à partir du moment où ils se mettraient d'accord, s'ils se mettent d'accord ensemble, et ben, il commencerait direct le plus tôt possible, parce que pour lui, c'est important de déjà préparer en fait les meilleures conditions pour pouvoir accueillir les joueurs après. Et ensuite, c'est ce qu'on disait en fait déjà un petit peu au début, hein, mais de le faire à l'avance, ça va permettre déjà de fixer tous les problèmes qu'on va voir arriver dès le début, et donc de gagner du temps en fait sur la suite. Il disait que c'était quelque chose au final où en fait en e-sport ça se voyait pas trop, alors que dans le cas du sport en général, il peut y avoir des choses qui vont être prévues bien plus à l'avance Et donc, il pense que ça, c'est un côté qu'il faudrait améliorer en termes d'e-sport. Après, aussi, un des problématiques, c'est qu'ils sont dépendants sur tous les agendas des autres équipes. Donc, notamment pour la LFL, tous ceux qui vont faire les EU Masters. Et après, pour les teams LEC, tous ceux qui vont faire les Worlds. Donc, ça va inévitablement retarder un petit peu le mercato. Mais il y a d'autres choses en fait, à faire. Il n'y a pas que le côté joueur, mais il y a d'autres choses déjà à mettre en place en fait, avant.
Ouais, il a parlé aussi de beaucoup d'inspiration qu'il a eu autre part. Genre, il lit pas mal, enfin, il s'informe pas mal sur les manières de fonctionner dans le sport traditionnel parce que ça reste la base, entre guillemets, dans le domaine sportif et de haute performance. Et comme il le disait Esso, bah, s'il le peut, il le commence direct. Enfin, sans le dire, en fait, il a un peu envie de se mettre à bosser tout de suite. Et lui, comme il voit sur le long terme, à chaque fois, c'est toujours plus facile de se dire que tu te mets à bosser sur un projet de 3 ans plutôt que sur un projet de 6 mois, quoi.
On peut peut-être faire finir, on fait peut-être une dernière question, non? Ça fait 1h30.
Do you think
Il y a une question dans le... Ok, vas-y.
do you think you'd be capable of answering the last question in French?
I don't think so.
I think it's
I
going
could
to
try.
depending about
Depends on the
what
question.
question.
Yeah, no, don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position anyway. So, vous voulez que je pose celle dans le chat de Galfio?
Ouais, il y en a une. Ouais,
C'est
ouais,
la dernière
je pense
question.
elle peut être sympa, ouais.
Okay, so last question, and this also comes from the chat. How do you see the relationship that you have, like personally, with the fans? Sometimes it's coming on the streams, on the shows. Sometimes it's just answering on social media or at an event. What is kind of your point of view on all of that interaction?
I mean, it's the same as what I talked about before. It's really important to me personally. I mean, I love it. Again, it just comes back to all those same things that I said about the fan base before. Is like it's being part of something that's more than just like what we're doing, and it's like it's good as well for me, I think, because I do have a tendency. I like new ideas, and I like being a bit. I don't know how you'd say it, like experimental with a lot of the things I do, and it's actually kind of helpful in a way to think, okay, if I can go on the stream after the game and justify this, like how would I justify it? That's actually really helpful to not go too fast. But mostly in general, it's just I think it's just great fun, really. So,
John, I think if you want to do that, we are doing the after league after every week after the match.
Yeah.
So if you want to explain something, you can.
Yeah. No. I mean
problem.
that's what I was that's what I was gonna do with that's what I was gonna do with Kaylin. That was the original idea, but it just became a bit harder to kind of schedule. But I think it's important. I think people are very, very, very cautious about giving stuff away, including within Solary. And I honestly, I don't think they should be. In a way, I mean, we had this discussion during the first split with the documentary that was going out, and a lot of the players got quite agitated about some of the stuff that we were showing on that, and I was always just like, I would show more than this, honestly, because the idea that like there was
everybody loved the
the content.
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance, right? Like, you obviously don't want to say absolutely everything that's going on, but I would have said more about the Champion Select stuff than we did. But it was stuff like I can't. Well, I mean, I can say it now because we played it a bunch. But it was like Gangplank we hadn't played yet, and someone mentioned that we could have picked Gangplank there. But Gangplank was Kio's most played in solo queue with like a 60% win rate at the time, and people were really like upset that was on the stream. Sorry, on the video. And I was just thinking, like, what? That means that you think that there's a team who's scouting us enough to watch our content, but not scouting us enough to look at OPGG and just assume that we also can play that in games. Like it's I guess there's some of that kind of like certainty that you're giving them, but we actually didn't play Gangplank very much that season, so like it wouldn't have helped them either. So there is this kind of thing in esports where everyone is super nervous about talking about all this kind of thing, which made it harder in the post game. But I do think it's good to come on and talk about the games and talk about them in detail, because firstly we'll have a very different approach, and there's also some things that I would want to take the responsibility for, the blame for, that look like a player's decision, because sometimes it's not, like, or it's even like a specific strat that we're working on, and when we play it in the game, I remember this happening, but I can't remember exactly why. There was something specific that we were looking at, and then in the game we did it, and Keo died for it, and then ended up massively losing his lane because of that death. But I was like, I've got no space to say that was my fault, not his.
It was mine.
Was that the
that's on
game?
me. I can't remember it specifically. It was a specific like play that we'd done where we were talking about like a certain thing. But obviously the champions, that's me. But I feel like people know that. The way I approach Champ Select is the ideas often come from the players, but it's still my final say. So I'll say, okay, we want a top laner, who gets prio, or just pick what's best for your lane, and he'll say this, or this, and I want to play Aurelia, and I'll say yes or no. So even if it's entirely their idea, the champion's always my responsibility, because I could say no and could pick something different, which maybe I should have done at certain points this season. I think there was a couple where afterwards I was like, I should have been more. Should have just been like, no, actually do my idea, not yours. But yeah, no, that was a very long-winded answer, but hopefully, yeah, that helps.
Ok, donc pour traduire, il disait que lui, de toute façon, tout le rapport avec la communauté et tout, il adorait. En fait, c'est ce qu'on disait tout à l'heure, mais ça lui faisait vraiment un sens dans ce qu'il faisait. Il y a vraiment des gens qui attendent les perfs, qui suivent les matchs, etc. Donc, il fait pas juste ça dans le vent. On parlait un peu du documentaire, et en fait, lui, sa position, c'était limite de montrer plus que ce qu'on a vu dans le documentaire, de parler des chambres select, de parler des games, d'aller dans le détail, etc. Alors, mais il sait que pour certains joueurs, ils vont être un petit peu frileux aussi là-dessus. Parce qu'il y a les joueurs peut-être étaient en mode des fois, ouais, qu'est-ce que vous allez montrer, etc. On n'a pas trop envie non plus de tout montrer, ou genre quelle phase de ma personnalité, qu'est-ce que je dis à ce moment-là, etc. Et donc lui, c'est pour ça en tout cas que il parlait du fait où il venait un peu des fois avec Kailan après les games pour parler de ce qui s'était passé et d'expliquer un peu les choix, parce que notamment il voyait sur le stream où des fois tu avais normal, hein, même nous, hein, ça a dû arriver, où on dit ouais, ça c'était une erreur de n'importe quoi, Joko, Scarlett, Kyo, etc. Alors qu'en fait c'est un game plan qui a été vu en amont, et en fait techniquement si c'est l'erreur de quelqu'un, c'est plus l'erreur du coach que l'erreur du joueur, parce que c'est lui qui l'avait donné. Et il parle aussi des pics. Donc tous les pics en draft, c'est même s'il y a des idées de joueurs, c'est lui qui les approuve. Donc en gros, si vous n'êtes pas content d'un pic, c'est la faute de Jad. Donc voilà pour le résumé.
Ouais, c'est exactement ça. On n'allait pas l'insulter après chaque match, mais concrètement.
Non, par contre, si vous voulez insulter quelqu'un, n'hésitez pas à envoyer un DM à Jacqueline qui prend tous les DM pour sa part. @Jacqueline sur Twitter.
Bon, je pense qu'on a fait le tour.
Je te fais une petite outro en français et tu traduis après, Nasty. Et du coup, merci à John d'être venu. Merci d'avoir répondu à notre question, d'avoir pris le temps. Et c'est même lui qui nous a démarché sur Twitter pour venir, donc ça fait trop plaisir. L'interview, elle va être complétée avec l'interview d'Envers le titre de Kailan. Donc normalement, il n'y aura pas trop de doublons, j'espère. Et s'il a une réponse, s'il y a trop de doublons, pas de John, tant mieux. Et voilà, du coup, merci. Et s'il a un dernier mot à passer, du coup, voilà.
J'espère que les gars, vous avez kiffé, surtout que notre coach vienne de lui-même sur le stream.
Show some love in the chat, John. Thank you very much. We feel blessed to be able to have you here. You were the one that kind of stepped out and told us on Twitter that you'd be happy to join. So thank you very much for that.
We thanks for having me.
Appreciated your time. We hope there won't be too many things that will be repeated in Kailan's video, but it's been a pleasure, honestly. If you want to maybe say something before you leave.
No, I mean, I just thanks for having me. Like I said, it's a massive reason why I really like it here at Solary, and it's a massive part of I think what will push the team to be more successful, like in all things, especially performance as well. Yeah, I think I've probably repeated myself a lot across multiple different things, because there's another documentary coming out about the team, one of which is about me, which I think also includes a lot of this stuff. But still, hopefully I'm at least consistent when I answer the same question. The worst would be is if Kaelin's the title video comes out and he asks me the same question, I'd give a different answer to him. when it's my boss, I say something different. But yeah, no, thanks very much for having me. I mean, it's great fun.
No, you're welcome.
Great, cheers. Do you want to maybe give us one word in French?
Oui, j'apprends, mais c'est difficile parce que je travaille en anglais.
Okay, yeah, it was perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Better than my English.
I've got my excuse practiced very well.
And don't forget, you can come back whatever you want.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah, I will do. I'll do later on.
If you want to speak and to say the truth about draft or plays or anything,
yeah,
you can come.
Yeah. I mean, I'll come on probably later if I know what we're doing, like for the French Cup or for even for the future.
Amazing.
Cool.
Amazing. Awesome.
Great.
Right. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Ah, c'était cool. J'espère que ça vous a plu, les gars. Quelle chance, hein.